The sun had just risen, and the world was a canvas of pink and gold when the news arrived, piercing through the tranquility of the morning. Leah Johnson, a woman of soft curves and gentler smiles, received the dreaded call that turned her world upside down. Her beloved husband, Robert, had succumbed to a fatal car accident. His demise was sudden, leaving Leah and their 15-year-old daughter, Jessica, in a state of shock and despair. With their primary breadwinner gone, the pair faced financial hardship, a fear that seemed to grow with each passing day. Leah, once a devoted housewife and mother, found herself struggling with the burdens of life. Jessica, a bright-eyed girl with a love for books and stories, watched the world she knew crumble around her. In the face of their troubles, the bond between mother and daughter tightened. They were all they had left. In their hour of despair, they found a glimmer of hope in Frank Williams. Frank, a seemingly compassionate bachelor, was a friend of a friend who had offered Leah and Jessica a place in his home until they could get back on their feet. Though hesitant, Leah accepted his offer, believing it was a necessary compromise for Jessica's well-being. As they packed their bags and moved into Frank's house, they were hopeful for a fresh start. They had no idea about the storm that was brewing ahead. Frank's house was a simple suburban home, well-kept and inviting. He greeted them with a warm smile, assuring them of their safety and comfort. However, as the days turned into weeks, the facade of the kind gentleman began to crack. The warm smile was replaced by cold, cruel sneers, and the assurances gave way to threats and abuse. He ruled the house with an iron fist, his temper flaring up for the smallest of reasons. Leah, bearing the brunt of his mood swings, did her best to shield Jessica. But the walls were thin, and the violent echoes left no secrets. One day, after a particularly harsh encounter with Frank, Leah came into Jessica's room, her eyes red and puffy. Jessica looked up from her dog-eared copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, her heart pounding. Leah forced a smile onto her bruised face, a pitiful attempt to hide her pain. "Jessica," she said, her voice quivering, "I know things are hard, but remember, it's darkest before dawn. We have each other, and we will find a way out of this." Jessica, mature beyond her years, nodded. "I understand, Mom," she responded, fighting the tears welling up in her eyes. She knew they were stuck in a cruel labyrinth, but she also believed in her mother's resilience. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, their life with Frank became a test of endurance. But with each passing day, their determination to break free grew stronger. As the chapter closes, we leave Leah and Jessica under the same roof as Frank, their lives intertwined in a dance of fear and resilience. The house was quiet as a crypt, amplifying the ticking clock's relentless echoes. Leah and Jessica had learned to navigate the corridors silently, the rooms casting long, dreadful shadows under the moonlight. Frank, a beast in the guise of a man, had turned their sanctuary into a living nightmare, the walls standing as silent witnesses to the brutality they endured. Frank's facade had vanished entirely now. There was no kindness left in his eyes, just a cruel mirth that emerged when he taunted them. The bright-eyed girl Jessica had given way to a silent specter, her spirit suppressed under Frank's reign of terror. One evening, after dinner, Frank's anger erupted once again. He hurled accusations at Leah, his words as sharp as daggers. "You're nothing but a burden, Leah. A pathetic, useless woman," he spat, his rage casting a cold chill in the room. Leah, her body trembling like a leaf in the wind, bore the brunt of his words. She stood her ground, her resilience etched into the lines on her weary face. "I won't let you talk to me like that, Frank," she retorted, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. Jessica, sitting at the top of the stairs, clutched her book tightly as she listened to the escalating conflict. Her heart ached for her mother, but she felt powerless against the tempest that was Frank. In the days that followed, the abuse escalated. Frank's volatility seeped into every corner of the house, his mood swings casting a constant shadow over their lives. Even the smallest of mistakes would trigger his wrath, and often, Jessica would find herself the subject of his ire. One day, when Jessica couldn't find Frank's misplaced wallet, she became the target of his rage. "You're just as useless as your mother," he bellowed, his fists clenched. Jessica crumbled under his words, tears streaming down her cheeks. But even then, she held onto her mother's words. "It's darkest before the dawn," she reminded herself, believing in a future free from Frank's terror. Life with Frank was a psychological battle, the constant abuse leaving them emotionally drained. Yet, they held onto their shared dream of freedom, their spirits unbroken in the face of adversity. Leah, holding Jessica close one night, whispered into her ear, "I promise, we will escape this. We will find a way." Jessica nodded, holding onto her mother's promise as a lifeline. Late in the evening, as the city lay blanketed under the shroud of darkness, the sounds of muffled laughter and clinking bottles resonated through their small home. Frank was in his element, surrounded by half-empty alcohol bottles and filled with a dangerous glee that sent shivers down Jessica's spine. He had transformed their home into his personal tavern, his boisterous friends filling the living room with a cacophony that drowned out every other sound. Jessica, huddled in her room, tried to drown out the noise, her mind occupied with the homework in front of her. But the laughter from below was punctuated by harsh words and the occasional smashing bottle, each sound echoing ominously in the silent corners of her room. Fear hung in the air, a constant companion in this dance of dread that seemed never-ending. Late into the night, a particularly loud argument shook Jessica from her reverie. She peeked out of her room, her eyes wide and full of trepidation. The sight that greeted her was one of chaos. Frank, drunk and seething, was yelling at one of his friends, his words slurred and barely comprehensible. The room reeked of alcohol, the empty bottles a testament to Frank's excessive drinking. Horrified, Jessica crept back into her room, her mind a whirl of fears and concerns. She couldn't shake off the disturbing image of Frank, his anger amplified by his drunken stupor. It was a sight that filled her with a growing sense of dread, a foreboding feeling that warned of darker days ahead. Daylight brought no respite. Frank's hangovers were worse than his drunken fits. He was irritable and short-tempered, his cruel words causing Leah to flinch. His addiction had transformed him into a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at the slightest provocation. One day, after a particularly violent outburst, Jessica confronted her mother. "Mom, we need to leave. This is no way to live," she implored, her voice trembling with fear and concern. Leah, her eyes filled with a hopeless despair, nodded quietly. "I know, Jessica. We need a plan." That night, huddled together in the faint glow of a single lamp, Jessica and Leah plotted their escape, their whispered words a testament to their resilience and their will to survive. The reality of their life with Frank was horrifying, but their determination to overcome it was stronger. Leah's untimely death hung heavily over the house, casting an even more dreadful pallor on the already grim environment. The toxic cloud of Frank's abusive habits felt even more suffocating now that Leah was gone, a cruel reminder of her mother's struggle and the terror Jessica had lived in for so long. The dreadful night of her mother's passing was etched deep in Jessica's memory. Frank, in a drunken rage, had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. And Leah, after years of being a silent victim, had finally paid the highest price. Jessica found her in the early morning, her spirit stolen away by the same cruelty that had robbed them both of their freedom. It was a sight that hardened her resolve, igniting a fierce determination to escape this nightmare. With the house steeped in silence and Frank passed out on the couch, Jessica knew she had to seize this opportunity. Her mother's last words echoed in her mind, "Leave, Jessica. You deserve better." In the dimly lit room, Jessica gathered her belongings, each item a sharp reminder of a life she desperately needed to escape. Clothes, money, her mother's old photographs, each piece was painstakingly selected, folded, and packed into an emergency backpack. Her heart pounded against her ribs, matching the rhythm of the ticking clock on the wall. With the backpack slung over her shoulder, Jessica gave one last look around the dilapidated house. It was a symbol of years of torment and abuse, a prison from which she was finally escaping. A single tear escaped from her eyes, not out of regret, but of relief that she was finally stepping away from this painful past. Stepping into the cool night air, Jessica felt a strange mix of freedom and fear. It was the first time in years she felt the weight of Frank's oppression lift from her shoulders. Yet, the harsh reality of her mother's absence and the unknown path ahead made her heart heavy. The neighborhood was eerily quiet, the only sound being her own footsteps against the gravel road. Jessica looked back at the dimly lit house one last time before turning her back on it. The feeling of leaving the monstrous Frank behind was both terrifying and liberating. Jessica walked on, her mind filled with a chaotic mix of grief, fear, and a newfound hope. She was alone, yet free. Lost, but finally on a path leading away from the horrors of her past. The road to recovery would be long and arduous, but she was ready. Her resolve was stronger than her fear, her determination greater than her uncertainty. As the first rays of dawn peeked through the gloomy clouds, Jessica found herself on a bus headed towards the unknown. With her mother's memory etched in her heart and her emergency backpack beside her, she was embarking on a new journey, one that held the promise of a brighter future. After days of traveling, the bus came to a halt in a small, unfamiliar town. Jessica's heart pounded as she stepped off, her daughter Emma's hand firmly clasped in hers. This was a new start, but every unfamiliar face held a flicker of uncertainty. With a sigh, Jessica steadied herself and hailed a cab. She gave the driver an address she had memorized, the destination a ray of hope, Kitty's house. Kitty was an old friend from high school, one of the few people who knew her past and still offered unwavering support. When the cab pulled up to the modest but welcoming house, Kitty stood on the porch, her warm smile a beacon of hope. She embraced Jessica and Emma, whispering reassurances that melted away some of their fears. For the first time in what felt like forever, Jessica felt safe. As days turned into weeks, Jessica found herself settling into the normality she craved. Emma was enrolled in the local school, and Kitty offered her a room in her home. But as the dust of their chaotic past began to settle, a new challenge arose: financial hardship. With no significant work experience and a child to support, finding employment was not easy. Jessica spent her days traversing the town, filling out job applications, and attending countless interviews. The frequent rejection was hard to swallow, but she was determined not to let her circumstances dictate her future. One afternoon, after another unsuccessful job hunt, Jessica returned to Kitty's home, disheartened. She found Kitty in the kitchen, brewing coffee, her brow furrowed in worry. "You okay, Jess?" Kitty asked, her hazel eyes studying Jessica's tired face. "I'm trying, Kitty," Jessica admitted, "but it's so hard. No one wants to hire someone with no experience." Kitty took Jessica's hands in hers, a gesture of comfort. "I know it's hard, but you can't give up. You're strong, Jess. You'll get through this." Despite Kitty's encouraging words, Jessica found herself lying awake at night, the anxiety of her situation creeping in. She wanted to give Emma a stable life, one far removed from the torment they'd escaped. But how could she when every door seemed to close in her face? But Jessica refused to surrender to despair. She drew strength from Emma's innocent smile, from Kitty's unwavering support, from the promise she'd made to her mother. She wouldn't let her past define her. She wouldn't let Frank win. As Jessica continued to face the daunting task of finding employment, she made a vow to herself and Emma. No matter how long it took, no matter how many doors closed, she would fight. She would build a better life for her and her daughter, a life free from fear. Several weeks had passed since Jessica arrived at Kitty's house. The sense of impending doom that had trailed her had finally started to dissipate, replaced by a glimmer of hope. On one bright, promising morning, Jessica received a call offering her a position as a receptionist at a local restaurant. The wave of relief that washed over her was overwhelming. On her first day, she was introduced to the hustle and bustle of the restaurant, a stark contrast to the quiet, fearful life she had left behind. She was introduced to a series of new faces, a whirlwind of greetings and smiles. Among them was William. William was a university student working as a waiter in the restaurant. He was immediately smitten by Jessica's resilience, her warm smile despite her hardships. Their friendship began over shared coffee breaks and blossomed into something deeper, a bond neither of them had anticipated. One afternoon, after a long, demanding day at the restaurant, William invited Jessica to his home for dinner. After a moment of hesitation, she accepted the offer, her heart pounding with an unfamiliar sense of anticipation. William's house was a cozy abode, filled with the aroma of freshly cooked pasta and the sound of soft music playing in the background. As they shared a meal, they laughed and talked about their lives, their dreams. It was a simple night, but to Jessica, it was a beacon of normality, a stark contrast to the life she had been leading. Over time, Jessica found herself frequenting William's house. His presence offered her a sense of calm and stability that she craved. Despite the trauma and fear that lingered in her heart, she began to allow herself the chance of happiness, of love. Emma, too, began to warm up to William. He treated her with kindness and respect, and she relished the sense of security he provided. She would look forward to their visits to his house, to the warmth and love it offered. However, Jessica could not forget her past entirely. The fear of history repeating itself haunted her dreams. She constantly found herself studying William, watching for any sign of the monster she had once lived with. Would he turn into another Frank? Could she ever truly escape her past? The promise of a new relationship was a beacon of hope, but Jessica was well aware of the shadows that lurked in her past. As the chapter closes, Jessica must navigate this new relationship, keeping her fears at bay while giving herself a chance at happiness. Balancing her job at the restaurant, caring for Emma, and handling the blossoming relationship with William, Jessica found herself in a whirlwind of responsibilities and emotions. Every morning was a flurry of preparing breakfast, dropping Emma at Kitty's, rushing to work, and then returning home to a mountain of chores. Despite the chaos, there was a rhythm, a semblance of normalcy that kept her grounded. But the days began to grow increasingly challenging as she delved deeper into a relationship with William and got to know his family. His father, a stern man with piercing eyes, proved to be her biggest hurdle. From the beginning, his father made it clear he didn't approve of Jessica. He saw her as a woman who didn't fit into their social circle, a woman beneath them. His criticisms were subtle at first, an offhand comment here, a scrutinizing look there, but soon the disparagements became overt and damaging. "Dad, you have to stop this," William argued one evening after dinner when his father had made yet another remark about Jessica's job. "Jess is more than her job or her past. She's an amazing person, and you need to see that." However, his father remained unconvinced, his prejudices too ingrained to be swayed by his son's passionate defense. The tension in the house grew with every visit, every meeting filled with dread for Jessica. Yet, amidst the turmoil, she found comfort in Emma. Her daughter was her beacon of hope, her source of strength. They spent evenings doing homework together, reading storybooks, or simply cuddling on the sofa. Seeing Emma's innocent smile gave Jessica the courage to face the adversity she was confronted with. Life was not easy, and it seemed as though each day brought with it new challenges. But Jessica, hardened by the battle she had already won, was not one to back down. She knew she had to protect Emma, to give her a chance at a better life. And if that meant facing William's disapproving father, then so be it. Life had been a roller coaster for Jessica, with every turn presenting a new challenge. The stress from William's family had been stifling, but a sudden encounter with Oliver, a wealthy, aging man with no family, brought an unexpected relief. He was a frequent customer at the restaurant, always asking for Jessica to assist him, fond of her impeccable manners and charming smile. One day, Oliver invited Jessica to his mansion on the city outskirts. The mansion, a beautiful piece of architecture nestled amidst lush greenery, seemed like a different world. He proposed that Jessica and Emma move in with him, an offer that felt like a lifeline. "We need each other, Jessica," Oliver had said, his voice gentle yet determined. "I need a family, and you need a home. It's a simple transaction." Jessica was hesitant, but the chance of a new beginning for Emma overpowered her doubts. She accepted, and they moved in. It was an entirely different world, a complete departure from their previous life, and the grandeur of the mansion often left Jessica feeling overwhelmed. The mansion was a peaceful haven for them, but it held a secret that would drastically change their lives. Oliver, though kind and accommodating, held a grave secret. He was sick, terminally ill, and he needed expensive surgery to save his life. Unable to bear the cost, he had accepted his fate until Jessica's discovery. While exploring the mansion, Jessica stumbled upon a locked door in the basement. A forgotten key discovered in Oliver's study unlocked the secret room, revealing a box. Inside the box, nestled amongst old paperwork and trinkets, Jessica discovered raw diamonds. The diamonds were an answer to their problems. They could pay for Oliver's surgery, lifting the looming threat of his mortality. Jessica was filled with hope and determination. She had to save Oliver, a man who had given them a second chance at life. Time had become a precious commodity, each tick of the clock echoing ominously through the luxurious mansion. The usually tranquil abode was now filled with a tangible dread. The Grim Reaper was at their doorstep, and for Jessica, surrender was not an option. The diamonds, previously a source of awe and wonder, were now their lifeline. Following an emergency call, Oliver was rushed to the hospital, the doctors quickly working to stabilize him. Jessica sat anxiously in the waiting area, her hands clenching the velvet pouch that held the raw diamonds. Oliver's health was deteriorating rapidly, and the doctors decided that surgery was the only viable option. However, the surgical procedure was expensive, more than Jessica could afford. The diamonds, she realized, were their only hope. With a determined heart, Jessica turned to Mr. Thompson, an old friend of Oliver's, who was also a gemologist. "Thompson, I need your help," Jessica implored, unveiling the pouch of raw diamonds. Thompson's eyes widened at the sight, his practiced gaze recognizing their worth immediately. But his surprise soon turned into confusion, questioning why Oliver, a man known for his wealth, needed financial assistance. Jessica quickly briefed him about the situation, explaining Oliver's illness, the lack of funds, and their desperate need for help. Understanding the urgency, Thompson swiftly acted, using his connections to secure a fair price for the diamonds. The stones were as beautiful as they were precious, their radiant glow symbolic of the glimmering hope that now flickered in Jessica's heart. Once they had secured the funds, Jessica rushed back to the hospital. The doctors, now assured of payment, proceeded with the operation. It was a grueling wait, every minute testing Jessica's patience and resilience. But she held on, her belief unwavering, her hope undying. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the doctors emerged, their faces masked but their eyes conveying success. The operation had been successful. Oliver was stable and would recover. Relief washed over Jessica like a soothing wave, her heart beating in sync with the reassuring ticks of the clock. A few weeks had passed since the surgery. The mansion, once filled with a haunting dread, was now echoing with a sense of peace and tranquility. Oliver was recuperating well, his health improving with each passing day. Jessica was relieved, her nights no longer filled with worry, her days no longer shadowed by fear. But she knew, the trials and tribulations she had faced had changed her, made her stronger. Oliver was grateful to Jessica for her courage and quick thinking. "You saved my life, Jessica," he told her one evening, his voice filled with gratitude. "I want to repay you in any way I can." But Jessica shook her head, smiling gently. "You've already given me so much, Oliver. A home, a secure future, and most importantly, a second chance at life." With Oliver's health stabilizing, Jessica felt the time had come for her to focus on her own dreams and aspirations. Encouraged by Oliver, she enrolled in a local college, deciding to study business management. She had experienced the harsh reality of life and knew the value of education and self-reliance. While she immersed herself in her studies, she also became a pillar of strength for Emma. The little girl had experienced much in her short life, but her mother's courage and determination were her guiding lights. Seeing Jessica juggle her education, parenting, and the household ignited a fire within Emma, making her aspire to be as strong and brave as her mother. In the meantime, William learned about Jessica's journey and, filled with remorse, tried to re-enter her life. But Jessica was a changed woman. She no longer sought validation from others and was content with her own progress. Politely, but firmly, she told William that their paths were now different and wished him well. The story ends on a hopeful note, Jessica standing tall amidst the trials of life, the mansion, a symbol of her past struggles and future triumphs. Oliver, now fully recovered, continues to be her pillar of support, their bond deepened by shared adversity and mutual respect. And as for the diamonds, they became a reminder of the tough times they had sailed through, their sparkle mirroring the resilience in Jessica's heart. But they also served as a beacon of hope, a promise that when life gives you diamonds, raw, unpolished, and challenging, it's in your hands to turn them into a shining testament of survival and triumph. Did you like this story? Comment below what you think and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.